Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you guys all for coming. Everyone's going to be coming down in just a second. You don't have to take my picture. I'm not that interesting. Oh, light test, perfect. If everyone can take their seats, that would be great. The speakers will be down in just a second. The speakers will be down in just a second. For my friends at CBS, your microphone looks great to me. Does it sound okay? Great. All right, thank you for taking your seats. We'll start in just a second.
Well, thanks, everybody. Whoa, all right. We've got good audio. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is a very exciting day, and we're honored to host this event in the literal backyard of the Department of Transportation. I made sure to arrange today's weather, and we'll speak a little bit more later, but let me begin by introducing you to my colleague and friend who is guiding the implementation and coordinating the many agencies involved in this historic bill from his seat at the White House, Mitch Landrieu.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and it's great to see all of you on this fantastic day. I'm thrilled to be here with my great friend, Secretary Granholm and Gina McCarthy, and to the senators and congressmen and women who are here with us today that helped make this bill possible. Just 90 days ago, President Biden signed the bipartisan infrastructure law on November 15th, making a once-in-a-generation investment in the nation's infrastructure and the economic competitiveness a reality. This bill is, of course, a historic opportunity to rebuild America's roads, bridges, rails, expand access to safe drinking water, ensure that every American has access to high-speed internet, and to usher in a new era of American clean energy. But it's also an opportunity to bring back American manufacturing and ensure that we employ people in good-paying union jobs, leaving no person or no community behind. In our first nearly 90 days since the law was signed, this team has hit the ground running, is getting the job done, and has gotten us to this fantastic point today. We're focused on deep engagement with state, local, and tribal territorial governments. More than $85 billion have been announced and allocated to states for roads and bridges, water system, ports, airports, and more. 25% of this bill are all new programs like the one that is being discussed here today. The EV Charger program is a perfect example of how we are building a better America, because these investments, earlier this week by President Biden, he was able to announce a major EV charging manufacturing win with a company that will build Buy America compliant EV chargers in Tennessee. It is one of the many announcements that the President made in the last few months, including Siemens, General Motors, and ABB. Under President Biden and the bipartisan manufacturing infrastructure law, domestic manufacturing in America is roaring back. The bipartisan infrastructure law included a down payment on our EV future with more than $7 billion in funding to secure an American EV supply chain from materials processing to battery manufacturing and recycling, along with $7.5 billion to build out the first ever nationwide public EV charging network. Last year, we announced the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, which will support and accelerate deployment of the national EV charging network, including by providing technical assistance to the states as they develop their comprehensive EV charging plans. This level of coordination is unprecedented on the federal level, and Secretary Buttigieg, Secretary Granholm, and Gina McCarthy are getting it done, and they're getting it done well. Because this is how we're going to win the future. One team, one fight mission to deliver results for the American people. Now, we talk a lot about building a better America. The build, of course, is really important, but the better is important as well. And the better means using products that are made in America. The better means creating good-paying union jobs. The better means addressing equity and leaving no person or no community behind. And the better means tackling the climate crisis and advancing environmental justice, investing in clean energy sources in communities all across America, all of which will help the economy grow, lower prices, and create greater opportunities for all of us. These new EV chargers will use American parts, iron and steel. They'll be installed up and down highway corridors across the country by IBEW workers, and the benefits will ripple out thousands of miles away. There's no question about it. America can lead the world in electric vehicles. This program today is an embodiment of all of those values, building a better America for us all. I thank all of my partners, and now I am so happy to introduce the person leading the President's climate effort, his domestic climate advisor. Please help me welcome Gina McCarthy.
I think I can take this off here. Ooh. Thank you, Mitch. It's great to be here. Thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, for always hosting and having good weather. I can't quite figure that out. And thank you, Secretary Granholm, for all of your tremendous leadership. I want to recognize today is really an important day. And I want to recognize some of the folks who are here and thank them for being here and for their leadership. I see Senator Copper. Thank you, sir, for all of your leadership. I see Senator Heinrich. I see is that you, Senator Hickenlooper? There you go. And I can't miss Representative Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman, you're always the best, and these are your issues, and we're so happy to be making progress. So, and I know there are others out there, but the masks always blind me, so you'll have to forgive me. But the President's vision on tackling the climate crisis is really all about opportunity. Opportunity we are seizing in electric vehicles right here, right now. EVs present a public health opportunity to deliver cleaner air all across our neighborhoods, and an economic opportunity to create high-quality jobs right here in the United States. And that's why President Biden is so excited. He has taken decisive action to jumpstart an American EV future that is made by American workers. And over the past year, the President has rallied automakers and auto workers behind a national goal of 50% electric vehicle sales share by 2030. Why? Because anyone who's ever driven an EV knows that they don't just help tackle the climate crisis and clean the air. They perform better, and the cost savings are amazing. So once you go EV, you are never going back. And to lead by example, thank you. And to lead by example, the President committed his administration would go all electric by transitioning our federal fleet of more than 600,000 cars and trucks to zero emission. So by 2035, every single vehicle we buy, including trucks, will be zero emission models. And today we're making historic investments to build out our country's first nationwide network of 500,000 EV chargers, and at the same time, the President's Made in America policies are spurring investments in manufacturing and building our EV future here in America. And you know what that means? You guessed it. Good-paying union jobs, building electric vehicles and chargers right here as we move our charging stations forward so everybody can know that they're accessible. Because of our President's leadership and all this terrific work by his cabinet, EV demand is already growing and the transformation is well underway. You know, last year's EV sales nearly doubled. Now they're higher than ever before, and they're projected to go higher and higher every year. And a family that chooses an EV will save up to $1,000 a year on fuel. There is nothing better than the steps we're taking today to show the American public that this administration is working for them, for their families, their communities, and get us into the 21st century economy, leading the way right here in the United States. So I am incredibly excited, in case you couldn't tell, and I am both happy and honored now to introduce the Energy Secretary of the United States of America, Secretary Granholm, a woman who is leading the charge, pun intended, towards our EV future.
Thank you, Gina. So happy to be leading the charge with you. And I'm happy to be standing here sandwiched between our two electric vehicles. Secretary Buttigieg and I both have two of the electric vehicles that are in that 600,000 electric vehicle fleet, and more to come, obviously. So the future is electric, and this administration is moving toward it at lightning speed. So as Gina mentioned, in August, the President and the big three automakers stood side by side in the Rose Garden, I think with a number of those who are here, including Congresswoman Dingell, to be able to say that the private sector is committing that half of their fleet will be electric by 2030, which is amazing because, as Gina said, we are really moving in that direction so fast that we may even get there sooner than that. But we're not going to go electric fast enough if we don't have the ability to eliminate range anxiety for people and to be able to have them plug in wherever they live, wherever they work, wherever they want to head. And so today, to make sure that every American can not just purchase an electric vehicle, but use it wherever they go, we're so happy to be able to give guidance to the states across the country about how to access the funding in this, in the announcement today, which is $5 billion and the guidance for states for setting up to 500,000 electric vehicle charging ports across the country. That $5 billion will be part one of the effort that we are undergoing with the joint office between the Department of Energy and the Department of Transportation. This first tranche is really the spine of our transportation system. The preference will be for charging stations along highways and transportation corridors. Part two will be in partnership with states and local governments and tribal communities to make sure that this charging ability is in all communities, particularly in communities that have not had access to charging stations. We want to make sure that every community has the ability to not just have a vehicle, but charge it as well. So the detailed guidance, which is on the website, is being released today, and this joint office that we have set up will help every state decide on how and where they're going to be establishing these chargers. Analysis and training and advice will be through that joint office. And once we approve their plans, the plans will be due on August 1st. And once we approve their plans, we'll help the states to implement the funds and get the chargers into communities. Once we get shovels in the ground to put these chargers up, as Gina says, it is going to mean jobs, 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 and more jobs in every pocket of the nation. I was recently in Virginia, and I met with an IBEW apprentice. Her name is Danielle Crowley, and she already gets health insurance. She has a 401k, and she's slated to get paid more than $30 an hour once she becomes a foreman. The jobs that are good-paying union jobs all over the country, in every pocket of this country, and the training that goes with it is a huge opportunity for communities. So the federal investment in EV charging is going to go a long way to boost local communities and to create this seamless national network that provides accessible charging for all. It is only one piece of the puzzle, though, because that $2.5 billion that remains is going to focus on charging deserts. And let me just say that the opportunity here in terms of affordability is very clear, especially, and I'm so grateful that these members of Congress are here who understand the importance of bringing down costs for real people, because the next step in the president's agenda is to get that Build Back Better initiative passed, and that will reduce the cost of these vehicles off the top at the dealer up to $12,000 per vehicle. That next step is really the best answer to the inflation you're seeing, to reduce the costs for real people. Studies have shown that, for example, the Ford F-150, the new Ford pickup truck, the Lightning, is already 17% more affordable than the gas-powered pickup over the life of the vehicle. But if you add those off-the-top tax credits, it will be more affordable at this point of purchase in addition to over the life of the vehicle. So taken together, an electric future comes into focus, and with it, good-paying jobs, good health, good communities across the nation. We are excited to get it done. I am excited also to partner with Secretary Pete Buttigieg and bring him back up right now.
Well, thank you, and again, welcome to the DOT. I am so thankful for our partnership with the Department of Energy and with Secretary Granholm, and so thankful for her leadership on this, with Mayor, Advisor, Director Landrieu, who has been such a leader on many of these issues from before he came here to Washington. We're so thankful to team up with him and his team now. For National Climate Advisor Gina McCarthy, who brings such enthusiasm and such expertise to these issues. And I want to thank my own colleagues, Deputy Secretary Polly Trottenberg, who is here somewhere. There she is. And the whole DOT team who've done such extraordinary work on this. I want to thank the congressional leaders here, Representative Debbie Dingell, who lives and breathes the auto industry and is constantly making sure that workers win in this electric vehicle future. Thank you for your leadership. Senator Carper, who is also Chairman Carper, one of the authors of this historic bill and someone for whom we are so thankful in having shaped it to be the generation-defining investment that it is. Thank you for everything you've done to get us here. Senator Heinrich, who among other things has educated me on how things are a little bit different in big western states where safety issues include countermeasures for elk, not something that comes up very often in Indiana. Thank you for your attention to making sure everybody is included in these infrastructure investments and for everything you're doing on Capitol Hill. And my friend and neighbor, Senator Hickenlooper, who established Colorado as a leader in the field as governor and is now similarly in the United States Senate, helping America lead the way for the future. Thank you for being here and for everything that you've done. And to all of the members of Congress from, I might add, both sides of the aisle who acted to pass this bipartisan infrastructure law, which contains so many of these transformative investments in critical infrastructure and electric vehicle infrastructure like what we're celebrating today. I grew up in an auto town. A town that emerged around the Studebaker car company and one of those moments in which the U.S. auto industry powered America into the future and helped to create an American middle class. And I also grew up in the shadow of empty auto factories because the very same people and companies that represented innovation for one generation didn't always manage to keep with the times for the next generation. Innovation is central to the past, present, and future of our auto industry. And we see that right now with the opportunity for America to lead the electric vehicle revolution. U.S. companies and workers are ready, but as so often, while industry is ready to lead the way, good public policy has to pave the way. President Biden's historic law marks the largest investment in EV infrastructure in American history. And what we're doing today is rolling out the first part of that investment, with allocated amounts for the first year of nearly $5 billion, allowing the states to begin building out their pieces of the nationwide EV charging network that we're going to need along our interstates and major highway corridors. We already know that EVs are the future. The auto industry is headed there. Consumers are increasingly headed there. The market is headed in that direction already, which might raise the question of why we're bothering. But there are three major questions that we have to act in order to make sure the answer to those questions are the right ones. Will it happen quickly enough to help us confront the climate crisis with all the lives and livelihoods at stake? Will American companies be the one to lead the way, with American workers getting those benefits? And will every American consumer, no matter where you're from or where you live, be able to reap those benefits? Those things will not happen on their own, but they will happen with our action. And make no mistake, as my colleagues shared, the benefits are enormous. EVs aren't just cheaper to fuel, they are cheaper to own. Cheaper to maintain because they don't have some of those expensive components or things you've got to change, like engine oil or spark plugs. They save owners thousands over the lifetime of a vehicle on maintenance and repair costs alone, in addition to the fuel savings. And we know that the cost of EVs themselves will continue to come down in the year ahead. And crucially, these savings actually have particular potential for those who live in rural areas. I know that because of the way electric vehicles entered the market, many might think of them as a luxury item, something that belongs to those who live in the biggest cities next to the most chargers and have the most money to spend. The reality is, nobody benefits more from EVs, in principle, than those who drive the longest distances, which is often our rural Americans, who stand to save the most money on gas and maintenance, provided we support rural communities and do not leave them behind in the EV race. Same for many in our cities, who may live not in a single-family dwelling, but in a multifamily dwelling where we need to be intentional about their charging infrastructure. Last week I talked to the mayor of a small rural town in Colorado who talked about how his community had been once known as the Valley of Death for EV drivers, but now they were acting to make sure that they had strategically placed chargers. A county commissioner in rural Minnesota told me about the importance of charging infrastructure for people in the ag sector who need to drive long distances to get their crops to market. And it is to support communities like this that our department released our EV Rural Toolkit a few days ago. Whatever you count on your car to do, whether it's dropping off your kids, which you can now do in a plug-in minivan, or whether it's powering your shop tools on a work site out of one of these remarkable electric pickup trucks. EVs are for everybody. And the good news is 48 states have already designated EV corridors, highways that are ready for EV charging infrastructure. And some of our most rural states, including Montana, including New Mexico, are ahead of the curve with more miles of EV corridors than many of their more urban counterparts. And this is just one part of the vision. Soon we'll be rolling out an additional $2.5 billion for a new grant program with even more funding for chargers at the community level across the country. None of this is going to be possible without American workers who will build this national network of EV chargers. Nor is it possible without the partnership of innovative electric vehicle companies from Silicon Valley to the Motor City that have paved the way. And earlier this week, the President announced new private sector commitments to build chargers, another source of jobs, alongside building the vehicles themselves, and creating those jobs right here in America as part of the administration's Buy America vision. So we know that we have a lot of work ahead of us to build the EV charging network that will be available to every American, but we also know that America is up to the challenge. In the 1930s, President Roosevelt created the Tennessee Valley Authority and the Rural Electrification Administration to make sure that rural communities had the same access to electricity itself as big cities. In the 1950s, President Eisenhower insisted that the interstate highway system serve every corner of America. And now, President Biden is building on that tradition and carrying it forward by teaming up with states and the private sector to build a nationwide network of EV chargers by 2030 to help create jobs, fight the climate change crisis, and ensure that this game-changing technology is affordable and accessible for every American. So we're so excited to be here, so thrilled by today's announcements. We are just getting warmed up and happy to take a few questions that'll be quarterbacked by Danny from our press team. So the administration has been acting aggressively in several ways, including the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, also diplomatic efforts, knowing, of course, that gas prices are a function of oil prices that are set globally, and ensuring that when and if there is any evidence of gouging or market manipulation, that's acted on aggressively. We also know, of course, that we can act to bring down prices across a family's budget, which is one of the reasons why the President has put forward measures that will reduce kitchen table costs on everything from insulin to electric vehicles and everything in between. And we continue to be hopeful of congressional action to make that a reality. So the states need to have their plans in by August 1st, and we are also going to be setting standards. We're not going to dictate to the states how to do this, but we do need to make sure that there are basic standards met around the interoperability of the chargers, around making sure that they actually benefit consumers, making sure that we meet our key policy goals. But I'm looking forward to the fact that the states will think of things that we never will here in Washington. For example, the flexibility in the bill really allows a lot of different states and private sector partners to take up different approaches in terms of whether to focus more on using the federal support for building and installation or whether to use them for operations and maintenance. I don't want to prejudge what's going to come in since today is really the day we're inviting those plans to come in, but we are looking forward to them and expect states to take it seriously and come through with some great ideas. Yeah.
The only thing I would add to the question that was just asked about standards is that in the guidance we do want to make sure, consistent with the President's goals, that 40% of the benefits of these investments flow to communities that have been disadvantaged, and that there are standards with respect to labor participation. So that too is very important. And then one other thing that Secretary Buttigieg alluded to is that the states do know best. There are also opportunities to dig once, meaning that there are broadband provisions that were also passed for states. There are obviously transmission lines potentially. And then, of course, there's EV infrastructure. In an effort to blend and to be efficient, having to dig once in where it makes sense is also something we'll be looking for.
Sorry, louder.
It will depend, right? I think the private sector will have something to say about that. But we do think that the $5 billion will get up to 500,000 charging ports. Now, again, we're going to look at the states. Some of those charging stations, most of them, will have more than one port associated with them. There are many states that are going to use this to leverage further investment. I mean, I know Michigan, for example, has already an electric vehicle program where they are splitting the cost, with the state granting a grant. I think it's up to maybe $8,000 if there is the private sector commitment and the unions. So it's a third, a third, a third. So those are the numbers that we're looking at. Yeah, there's no doubt that we need to continue to add both transmission capacity as well as zero carbon energy sources. That may, obviously, we're very bullish on renewable. That means we also have to add the storage to make that renewable dispatchable and reliable. But there are other sources of energy as well. Hydropower is a big one with zero carbon emissions. Nuclear has zero carbon emissions, and there's also a lot of technology to decarbonize the existing fossil fuel infrastructure. Ultimately, the president's goal is to get to 100% clean electricity by 2035. If we do that, that means essentially we've got to significantly enlarge the capacity, and that, of course, takes into account the additional charging that electrification will require. And that means electrifying everything, right, Senator Heinrich? So we will have to expand both the transmission grid as well as the sources of clean energy that we add to it in order to get to the president's goal.
That sounds like me because it's a hard one. The others are not. You know, we had and we continue to have a lot of discussions with the U.S. Postal Service. We were disappointed in the contract that was issued, but we know that there is work to be done together. We also know that the first tranche of vehicles is 50,000, and there are opportunities to make decisions after that. So we'll keep working with them, and we trust people outside will as well, because we think it's very important, especially since U.S. Postal Service vehicles are often in urban areas that have air pollution challenges. So there's a lot of considerations with this, and not just that we think electric vehicles will be less expensive to operate and run. They can likely, because of the amount of vehicles they're actually order them at significantly lower cost than they might have estimated quite a while ago when they looked at this, and also that they'll look at the opportunities they have to be the best neighbors possible and deliver the mail and clean up our air quality at the same time. So these conversations will continue, and obviously we're also looking to make sure that the Build Back Better Act gets passed, because there's significant resources in that to help our federal system to make the transition to zero electric vehicle emissions. So we're looking forward to all that happening, and we'll keep talking. There will always be pros and cons and setbacks, but as you look at the data today, the electric vehicles are getting cheaper. We know they're cleaner, and we know they're good to run, and we know that addresses the air quality challenges in a lot of communities. And we want to make sure that all those considerations are baked in to the decisions that are made, and I know they will be in the guidance document that's being put out today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Can't hear you, Dan.